Thank goodness Max Holloway is not declining, but the gap between him and the rest of the modern day featherweights is not as wide as it was between him and guys like Calvin Kattar and Brian Ortega. That's right, despite winning 4 rounds to 1, Max Holloway didn't just go out there and destroy Arnold Allen. Arnold Allen looked amazing, and he arguably won the 5th round, almost had it in the bag, which is crazy because I don't think anyone would have expected Arnold Allen to go out there and win the 5th, considering the way that he fights, the low output that he has. He didn't even win the 1st round, which is what I expected. It actually flipped. He went out there and beat on Max Holloway in the 5th and then got dropped. So that kind of lost him the round. I had it 4-1 for Max Holloway, 49-46 overall. And Max Holloway channeled that like Ricardo Lamas moment and was able to drop him. I mean, we haven't seen power from Max Holloway for a long time. The last time he dropped anyone was Volkanovski in their 2nd fight, but that was with a couple of kicks, right? I think one of them was actually like a check left hook or maybe an uppercut, but we haven't seen it in a while. And he just dropped Arnold Allen, who got overzealous in the 5th. His coaches gave him a monstrous speech going into that 5th round. They were saying like World War III, you know, fly or die. And Arnold Allen just went out there with this crazy energy and left it all out there. I actually thought it was kind of good for him because, again, he was winning the round and it made him look better, because if he didn't actually get that rally in the 5th, he would have only had one convincing round, which would have been the 2nd. But it was the volume, as we all expected, the output. Max Holloway fought a perfect fight. He didn't go out there and just stand in front of Arnold Allen's piston fast left hand and super fast jab. The guy has tons of power in his hand, lightning fast speed. That would have been a bad idea. Max Holloway, I believe that if he would have just went out there and tried to stand right in front of him and box with him, he may have started to get, a little bit behind. He may have started to get caught off guard. So what he did in this fight is he fought behind his kicks, oblique kicks, beautiful body kicks. That was really what Max Holloway did best in this fight. He went to the body. I think he landed like 25 hard body kicks to the ribs of Arnold Allen. He was going with spinning attacks, spinning back kicks, spinning wheel kicks to the head, and of course he was fighting behind the jab too. I actually think his best round with his hands was the 1st round, even though he dropped Arnold in the 5th. He was landing some really good combinations with his hands, but then it was like a big, heavy kicking approach, and with the jab. Max Holloway, he did what he needed to do, but we all kind of saw it, man. He didn't go out there and dominate him. Some people thought he was going to do that. I thought he was going to start to dominate Arnold Allen in the early rounds, but Arnold Allen fought really intelligently because he didn't go out there and try to win the 1st. He went out there, conserved his energy, and fought a really measured approach and almost won that 5th round. It would have been 48-47. And I'm sure that there are some crazy judges that have been scoring fights weirdly that may have scored that for Arnold Allen if he didn't get dropped in the 5th round. And although Max Holloway is still better than these guys like Yair and Arnold Allen, there are more of them coming up. And these guys are the new norm in the featherweight division. I would actually say that the top 5 featherweights right now, put them up against the top 5 lightweights, and I would say that the skill battle is neck and neck. Like, these featherweights these days in the top 5 are just as skilled as any other fighters in any other division. And as I said, this is the new norm. Max Holloway is not going to have easy fights after this. He's going to be fighting monsters like Ilia Topuria next. And that's the thing. It's like, does it really get easier? Evloev maybe after Evloev beats Bryce Mitchell, which will probably happen. I don't know, man. But it still remains true that Max Blessed Holloway is still the 2nd best featherweight on this planet after beating Yair and Arnold Allen. I would say that these 2 guys are the 3rd and 4th best featherweights. Max still solidifies his spot in the A tier of the featherweight division. And yeah, the gap is getting closer, but man, he fought really well. And this was not the Max Holloway just going forward and letting his hands go for 5 rounds. This was a measured approach for Max Holloway. Reminded me of a Corey Sandhagen in this fight, actually. It really did. Heavy kicking approach, lots of lateral movement across the octagon, on the back foot for a while, but again, still able to strike on the back foot. He looked amazing. Arnold Allen, like, I really think that if you were to put this guy up against anyone that's not named Volkanovski or Max Holloway or maybe Yair, I think he beats everyone else. I think this guy could go out there and knock out Ilia Topuria. I think that this guy could go out there and basically knock a bunch of featherweights out. I mean, his power looked ridiculously good, and I know he doesn't have a lot of knockouts on his record, but man, like, he's getting better, and he is a dangerous guy. I don't know who's next for him. Maybe the winner of Evloev and Bryce Mitchell. That would be a really good matchup, I think. You might want to put him up against a guy like Ilia Topuria, but again, maybe that guy's next for Max. Maybe Ilia Topuria would be next in line for Max Holloway, and I don't think we're going to see a lot of Max Holloway performances like the one that we saw over Calvin Kattar, the one that we saw over Brian Ortega anytime soon. I think we're going to start seeing some like Frankie Edgar type of performances from Max Holloway, or these kinds of performances, and that's fine. I can still appreciate that, but I'm longing for another Max Holloway beatdown over a guy like Brian Ortega, but I don't think those featherweights really exist anymore, to be honest. Those are the old guard, and the way that I see the featherweight division, I think it's like rapidly developing. If you look at the top 5 featherweights now versus how they were 5 years ago, it's completely night and day. And I know you could say something similar for other divisions, but guys like Arnold Allen, Yair Rodriguez, Volkanovski, Max Holloway, and maybe you can add Ilia Topuria. I mean, these guys are really ridiculously skilled, and it's going to be fun to watch these matchups. I actually think this might be the second best division in the UFC behind bantamweight. I might even put it over lightweight. And for Arnold Allen, there's really no reason to hang his head low. I mean, I know that he just lost his undefeated record, but to have a close fight with Max Holloway and it not be an all-out scrap, like a dirty war, that in and of itself is very impressive. And I understand that if he actually went out there and won, maybe it would have been a little bit sloppier, a little bit dirtier, but he also could have gotten finished. He also could have gassed out badly, and then it would have been like a Max Holloway record-breaking performance. So he did really well. He's still in his 20s. He probably beats every other featherweight. And for Max Holloway, he looked great. He did what he needed to do to beat this killer in Arnold Allen. And who is next? Like, I think you give him Ilia Topuria, he puts on a similar performance against Ilia Topuria. And although Max is going to keep beating guys like this, I just, I don't see any record-breaking Max Holloway wizard-like performances for the next year or so, because he's just going to be fighting these new up-and-coming killers at featherweight that are just different than the Ortegas of the world, that are just different than the Calvin Kattars of the world. Max is like a cheat code, man. He really is. The guy is unfinishable. He has a chin of granite, and even though his output wasn't anything crazy in this fight, it was still higher than the average fighter. It was still really good. As I said, he broke another one of his own records, or made an all-time statement with the 3,000 significant strikes mark. Max is literally like an overpowered fighter. And let's talk about the rest of the card. Edson Barboza sending Billy Quarantillo to the Shadow Realm. First of all, that knee was brutal. That's like a highlight reel tape worthy knee, probably the craziest knockout of the year so far. A lot of people were counting Edson Barboza out, but he's lost to just killers, bro. Giga Chikadze, I know that guy's not seen as like a top 5 featherweight, but he's still a freak. And Billy Quarantillo doesn't have a lot of power in his hands. I know he's got a good pace. I know he's tough as nails. He's got some decent boxing, but in a striking battle, it's just probably not going to go well for him like that. It's not like Edson Barboza's 45 years old. And sometimes there's just nothing you can do to not get KO'd. I mean, there was literally nothing Billy Quarantillo could have done to prevent that. I understand maybe you don't dip your head off the center line, but he was throwing a punch. He was trying to get out of the way of that. And Edson Barboza is just so fast with that knee. So hats off to Edson Barboza for making a quick decision like that. Let's put him up against a striker. I don't want to see Edson Barboza take on grapplers at this point in his career. He's not going to be a champion anymore. So let's just give him some fun matchups, some good striking battles. That's what I want to see from Edson. Dustin Jacoby, Azamat Murzakanov. I thought that Dustin Jacoby was going to win this one just based on his kickboxing, his experience, all the wins he has in the UFC. He got robbed in his last outing against Khalil Rountree. And talk about deceptive physiques. Azamat just looks like your average, over-the-hill, fat heavyweight that just doesn't take his career seriously and maybe got to the UFC too late. But goodness gracious, is this guy way better than I expected when I first saw him. I know he's relatively new to the UFC, but holy shit, is this guy fast. Dropping Dustin Jacoby, hurting him despite having a significant reach and height disadvantage. So really impressive from Azamat. He's now ranked. I want to see this guy fight some of the top 10 light heavyweights. I really want to see how that would go down because he looks very dangerous. He looks good. And beating a guy like Dustin Jacoby with striking is very impressive. Tanner Boser and Ion Cutelaba. Again, Ion is one of those coin flip fighters. You don't really know what you're going to get. Very inconsistent, but I'm happy that he got this one done. I feel kind of bad for Tanner Boser. It always sucks to see someone lose, especially by finish when it's their first fight in a new division. He was cutting down from heavyweight. He looked shredded. He probably worked his ass off to get down there, and he just gets finished by Ion Cutelaba. Not put out cold or anything like that, but again, Ion dropped him, was able to tee off on him up against the fence after taking him down. I'm happy for Ion. He's a character in the sport. He's taken a lot of losses back to back to back. It's good to see him get this win. He's going to stay in the UFC. If he lost this one, he may have been cut. So I'm happy to see Ion stick around. Pedro Munoz getting it done over Chris Gutierrez. Really good fight. Another example of an older guy stopping the newer guard from taking the torch. Pedro looked good, dropping Chris Gutierrez in the first round, winning the third round. The fans were booing in this fight. I don't understand that at all. I was actually a little bit annoyed by that. They had their flashlights out. They were waving their phones around, but it was a high-paced fight. I don't understand why the fans were booing. Both of these guys were in the pocket with each other, and it was a pretty good fight. I mean, I understand they weren't just slugging with their hands, but they were throwing a lot of kicks. They were throwing with high output, high volume. Another fight that I was really impressed with was Brandon Royval knocking out Mateus Nicolau. Extremely good performance, catching it with a knee, following up with a left hook, then finishing him on the ground. I think it's safe to say that Royval should be next in line for a title for whoever wins between Pantoja or Brandon Moreno. I hope to God that the UFC is not going to give Brandon Moreno a rematch if Pantoja beats him. I'm tired of seeing Brandon Moreno getting rematches and trilogies. I actually think Brandon's going to beat Pantoja, but let's just get a new contender in there. Brandon Royval, it's going to be a finish every time with this guy. So, yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed the video. What did you think of the fight card? Who do you want to see Max Holloway fight next? Who do you want to see Arnold Allen fight next? Until next time.